Hare Krishna, everybody. We welcome everybody to this beautiful session on the course on Journey Home by our dear Dr. Shubha Vilas. I honestly cannot think of a better person to do this, and I have a reason for saying this because I know I've been, seeing Shubha Vilas Prabhu for the last so many years, and he's one of the very, very uh, uh, pivotal role he played in the journey home to this world. The every book has a journey, right? It has to be taken to the people, and Shuvilas Prabhu, especially the non-English journey homes, and there are so many various languages in India, and there were such amazing book launches, and Shuvilas Prabhu was very, very actively involved in just coordinating and actually really publishing and releasing these books in various languages in India. So it's a great privilege and honor to really have Shubhilas Prabhu to do this wonderful session. Just a brief introduction about Shubhilas Prabhu. He's a lifestyle coach, a beautiful storyteller, of course, a story writer. Can you imagine, he has authored 40 books at this young age. This gentleman has authored 40 books. So not only is a good story writer, but is amazing storyteller, and we will be obviously seeing his storytelling capabilities in this wonderful course. He has interesting academic history. He has done his engineering, and he's also done his law. So another very unique combination of a person doing engineering and law, and then went on to do his PhD in leadership from the Valmiki Ramayana. So that's another very, very special. I think we would request him later on to help us a course on leadership from Ramayana. We would love to hear that also. But anyway, he has written many, many books like the Ramayana, The Game of Life. He is the author of the Open-Eyed Meditations, The Mystical Tales of the Magical Life, and various other books. And the interesting thing is that he has delivered more than 6,500 talks. I repeat, it is 6,500 talks, and he has inspired more than 7 lakh people across 20 countries in the last 10 years. What astounding statistics is that, right? 6,500 talks inspiring 7 lakh people, 700,000 people across 20 countries in the last 10 years. He is a speaker in prestigious universities like the Stanford, the Oxford, the Princeton, and of course various IITs and IIMs in India. And he has also spoken in some of the top corporates in the world, Google, Microsoft, Amazon being some of them. So yes, is and he was a monk at Sri Radha Gopinath temple. Of course, only the externals have changed. He's still a monk in his heart. So he was a monk for 11 years at Radha Gopinath temple. Did amazing service, becoming a wonderful disciple of His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj, and did some amazing service at Radha Gopinath temple. So I think it is a wonderful time that we all have to hear this very, very special course at a very, very special time in the history of the world, which is where we are celebrating 75 years of the appearance of His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj, and in the next 7 weeks, Dhruv Vilas Prabhu will be speaking for 75 minutes. Am I right? On this beautiful, they're going to take us on a journey, and the various lessons and the various take-home messages that we can have from this very, very special book. So without much ado, I would really like to welcome His Grace Shubha Vilas Prabhu, Dr. Shubha Vilas Prabhu, for delivering this wonderful talk to all of us. And I think I request all of you to be connected for the next 7 weeks. I think we'll be announcing the dates as and when it is going to happen. It may not happen every Friday, as I understand, but I think they will announce as we decide the dates. So thank you very, very much, all of you. Thank you very, very much, Dr. Shubha Vilas Prabhu. and over to you for delivering this very, very special session. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Dhamma Prabhu, for this introduction. I'm very grateful for introducing the course. Before I begin this course, I would like to offer a small prayer and we begin this long journey that we are going to be together on. Om Agyantimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshuronmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manovishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupakadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utaha Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadotam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhano Shute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shrivas Adi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ramo Rama Ramo Hare Hare. We would like to welcome all of you all to this most beautiful and most memorable course on the Journey Home book. The Journey Home for a lot of us has been an inspirational book, has been a book which is almost like a Bible to us in terms of what it means to be a seeker. And Radhanath Swami Maharaj, whom so many thousands and thousands of people are inspired by his teachings, his wisdom, his being, his thought process, and his humility, his devotion. This book is a absolute portrayal of all of that, practically all his life, and penned down by him in person. It makes it even more special. The journey home is very dear to me because I have been a part of the journey home from the beginning. 2008, when the journey home was just about to come, I was given the service of taking care of the sales and book launches and the promotion of Journey Home. To date, we have sold more than at least about 5 to 6 lakh copies of the Journey Home um, across the world, and many more will definitely be distributed for many years to come. Many of you are have read the Journey Home. Many of you are reading the Journey Home, and many of you will be reading the Journey Home, if not already, but after this course, surely. What I'm going to be humbly doing is going to be presenting the most powerful, inspirational things that you can learn from the Journey Home book. Obviously, in 7 sessions of 75 minutes each, I cannot narrate the entire book, but I'm going to be humbly trying my best to narrate as much of the book as possible, along with lessons that you can learn in your life. So, this is not just going to be a story of Radhanath Maharaj only, but from that story, what you can learn and make it a part of your story. How the story of His Holiness Radhanath Swami Maharaj can influence the story of your life. That's what this journey is going to be about. So, we're going to be learning overall through these 7 sessions 75 lessons from the Journey Home book. And each lesson will be narrated through the story of Journey Home and how to apply that lesson in your life I'll be narrating it through other stories and through contemporary examples, etc., to thoughts that will make that lesson your own. As I'm narrating this, as I'm going through this course with all of you, I would highly recommend all of you to read the book parallelly. So today I'm going to be covering the first 4 chapters of the book. So I want all of you to go back home and read the first 4 chapters after we are done, over the whole week. And I'll, as I go ahead, I'll keep telling you all how much I'm covering of the book so that you can go back and read the book also in parallel. And that's what will make the book alive for all of you. I am humbly and sincerely praying and seeking blessings from all of you that I can speak based on this book. This is such a glorious literature. This is such a glorious book of about a person who is so glorious. I am quite humbled to be able to be chosen to speak, present this course. When we were thinking that what would be an apt gift to give His Holiness Radhanath Swami Maharaj on his 75th birthday, one of the things that we came up with was this thought of a course based on his teachings. Because what greater gift can you give a person who has given himself to the world than to give his teachings to the world? And that is the whole thought process behind this course. And hopefully, with these 75 lessons that we will be sharing with all of you, you will all be nourished and also you'll be inspired to follow in the footsteps of His Holiness Radhanath Swami Maharaj. With those words, we begin today's session and we begin diving deep into the journey home. At the end of this presentation, at the end of this session, we will be sharing the notes of this session with all of you. So you will get elaborate handouts after every session. These handouts will be in the form of meditations that you can carry it for the rest of your life. So each session will be followed by handouts. Those who are in the WhatsApp communities and have registered with us will get those handouts. Those who are watching live on YouTube and still have not registered or still haven't joined the WhatsApp communities, please do join them. So because the notes will be sent over there. Okay. So having said that, let's dive deep into the journey home. The journey home begins with a beautiful story and a very powerful story. When um, when Richard Slavin, Radhanath Swami Maharaj, his name as a young boy was Richard Slavin. This story begins with his childhood. Richard was a very different child, not like the children of today and even of that era in 1950s. He was a very thoughtful and a very quiet child. So this book begins with a powerful story that happened in the life of this little boy. One day, he, along with his friend whose name was Danny, they were at the house of Danny, and Danny pulled Richard to the cellar. And as they walked down, Richard was a little scared because Danny told him to keep quiet and not tell anyone about where they're going. Without the notice of his mother and father, he took little Richard to the cellar. And there, he showed him some things that shook Richard from within his heart. This cellar was a hideout of his father. And there, the father of this little boy, Danny, hid many things. And of some of the things that were hidden over there were guns, solid metal guns. And not just guns, there were grenades there. And as little Richard touched those metal grenades and guns, he was scared because he knew he wasn't supposed to be here and he wasn't supposed to be seeing these things. And then Danny opened up a cupboard in which there was this massive picture of Adolf Hitler. I'm sure all of you know what that means. And along with the photo of Adolf Hitler, they were the symbols of the Nazi swastikas. And when Richard saw these symbols, he was really scared. And then this little Danny told Richard, "Can I tell you a secret?" Richard was immediately, wanting to know. Yes, please tell me. And this little boy, he told him something that Richard never forgot in his entire life. He said, um, my parents hate you. Richard had never heard anything like this. I'm sure if anyone tells you this, that we hate you, it's not easy to handle. So Richard immediately asked, what did I do that your parents hate me so much? He said, you are a Jew and they say that you killed Jesus. Richard was shocked. He said, Danny said, my father even says that God hates you. That shook Richard like anything. And then he asked Danny, do you hate me, Danny? This little boy, innocent. What do children know about hatred and love and all of these? They just are so innocent. This little innocent Danny, he told Richard, no, you're my best friend. I don't hate you. But when I grow up, maybe I will hate you. And he said, but I hope not. After that heart wrenching, shaking conversation, Danny and Richard come up, and Danny's mother offers Richard cookies to eat. And as Richard is holding those cookies in his hand, he's thinking, are these cookies poisoned? Imagine being in the house of people that hate you. And Richard, he had no option because the father of Danny just walked in. And Richard was too scared to refuse eating those cookies. And he ate those cookies. And then he went back home, completely shaken up. And he asked his mother a question. He said, Mother, does God hate me? I mean, the mother of Richard was really shocked. Such a small child coming and asking a question like that. She said, no, God loves you. And she was wanting to know what happened that you're asking such a question. And he said, no, I'm just curious. So, Richard, his first memories and first experiences of life were uh, very positive because he grew up in a family that loved God, grew up in a family that loved one another. But here was he experiencing something that was the most powerful and heart-shaking experience of life. Love and hate are two ends of the same coin. Many of us, we are all in situations of life where we may have to experience such situations. Spirituality begins when you can go beyond these experiences. If you want to improve the quality of your life, you have to improve the quality of your thoughts. And for that, you have to get a few things right. Um, for you to develop enlightened thoughts, which is what spirituality is, you have to develop an enlightened vocabulary. Watch your vocabulary. The easiest way to improve the quality of your thoughts will manifest as the as improvement of the quality of your own life. But that depends on what kind of language we use. If you are experiencing language which is filled with hate, filled with violence, filled with a lot of negativity, that's the kind of language that you will be used to, and that is the kind of thoughts that you will be embedding in your life. Um, the For each one of us to evolve and grow, we must have people around us who are more evolved than us. Vocabulary that we contain depends on the vocabulary of people around us. You cannot develop yourself unless you have people who are better than you. If you want to expertise the game of chess, you can't expertise with a person whom you can defeat easily. You have to play against a person whom you can never defeat, and only by playing against such a person again and again and again, you'll become expert in the game of chess. Similarly, when you want to improve, grow in your life, you need people who can give you good feedback, who can tell you things that will make you a better person. Like, for example, if someone thinks speaking vulgar language, speaking swear words is cool, that person needs to hear feedbacks. And there was a man who used to speak swear words every second sentence. And he was a public speaker, extremely powerful in his speech. One day, one of his relatives attended that speech and then came back and he began to praise his speech a lot. And he said, your speech is like a garland of roses. But in that garland of roses, there were four thorns. And this man was shocked. He said, what are you saying? What thorns are you talking about? He said, 4 times you used swear words in your speech, and those are the 4 thorns in your speech. And this person said, no, I'm just trying to appeal to a younger audience. And this man said, you are underestimating what a younger audience is inspired by. And then he spoke to that person and he said, if you really want to impact people, speak in a language that impacts them without using the wrong vocabulary. And after that, this man was so shaken that he decided never in his life he's going to use words that hurt people's hearts, use words that are going to bring people's consciousness down. And that is the way we all need to train ourselves. Richard, what he experienced that day in the form of hate speech is something that could have dented his heart forever. And all of us in our own journeys, the first thing we can work on to really become spiritual is to start being mindful of the words that we use. Start being mindful of what we say and how we say it. Because every word we say is either going to take us higher or take us lower. As Richard grew up, he was a very strange boy. He was a cute little boy, but he had some odd habits. Um, when he was 8 or 9 years old, he refused to sit on chairs because he thought sitting on the floor was more preferable. Now imagine in America, growing up in suburban Chicago, and yet Richard did not want to sit on chairs. He preferred to sit on the floor. And his parents were shocked with this thought that how can someone sit on the floor? In the West, sitting on the floor is almost unheard of. So when little Richard started insisting that he wants to sit on the floor, the parents didn't agree because everybody sat together on a dining table and ate together. The parents made one compromise. They said, you can not sit on the chair, but you can't sit on the floor. You can stand and eat. So while all the other family members sat on chairs, little Richard stood on the dining table and ate his meals. Richard was very uncomfortable with wearing new clothes. He would make his mother wash a new pair of clothes again and again and again and again till they looked worn out, and then he would wear them. He was very uncomfortable wearing new pair of shoes. He would take those new pair of shoes and scrape them with rocks till they looked worn out, and then he felt comfortable wearing them. Um, Whenever his parents bought a new car, when his parents bought a new car, little Richard didn't sit on the seat of the car. Instead, he sat on the floor. Imagine sitting on the floor of the car while all the other family members were sitting on the seats of the car. And he felt very embarrassed when he had things that others didn't have, or when he had better things than others. One day, the family went to dine outside, and when they were about to start eating the meal, little Richard made a commotion, just ran out of that place. And his parents couldn't understand why this little boy had to run out like that. His grandfather, Bill, walked out to find out what is wrong with little Richard. And he found Richard sitting in the car on the floor, and he was not wanting to come out of the car. And the grandfather asked him, what happened? And this boy said that um, I saw my classmate was serving as a waiter in that place, and I didn't want to embarrass him by standing there and eating while he's serving me, and I just ran out from there. The grandfather was really impressed. He said, "It's all right, little Richie." He said, "You did the right thing, and I'm proud of you." This was the kind of thought process and mindset that little Richard grew up in, and he was innately prayerful. He was innately connected to deeply spiritual thoughts. His mind was very different from children of his age and children of his locality. One day, he went and he met a rabbi, a very revered priest over there. And he asked him, imagine a 7, 8 year old boy asking such a question to the rabbi. He asked him, could you explain to me the meaning of these prayers? He was in a prayer meeting, and after the prayers were over, he walked up to the rabbi and he asked him, can you please explain me the meaning of these prayers? The rabbi had tears in his eyes and he was drawn to this boy. He said, nobody has ever asked me such a question. He sat down, he was trying to explain to the boy the meaning of the prayers. And then Richard, he asked the rabbi, how can I pray? And the rabbi gave a very profound answer to Richard that Richard remembered for the rest of his life. He said, in the Talmud, a book on the Jewish law, he said, it is taught that it is better to pray to God for strength to overcome temptations, difficulties, and doubts in order to do His will, rather than pray for Him to do our will. And this thought remained in the mind of Richard for a long time to come. Each one of us are created different. Being different is not a weakness, it's a strength. Um, some of us will be alone in a crowd all through your life. And that is a natural aspect of leadership trait. You will relate with everybody, but you also will know that everybody is not relating to you in the same wavelength. Because the more you hold yourself to high moral standards, the more and more you are going to be talked about. I'm sure little Richard at that point in time, was the talk of the town. All his friends, seeing his peculiar habits, started calling him little monk. Now imagine a 7, 8 year old boy being called a little monk simply because that's how he was. He was very different in the way he thought. Um, at some stage, we all have to learn to walk alone in a crowd. It is not that the world does not want to understand you, it's simply that the world cannot understand you. And that simply is a very beautiful space to be in. The first requisite that you are thinking ahead of the world or you're thinking different from the world is this. When I say the world, what I mean, I'm not talking about the 8.25 billion people in the world. And all of us have our own small worlds around us. And a lot of times, people in the world around us don't understand us. You don't have to be a rebel for that. You're just a path breaker and you're just a trailblazer. You have to simply trust your intuitions. And sometimes our intuitions cannot be logically validated. Why little Richard or little Monk was behaving like that, he couldn't explain. But he felt it so strongly and he went ahead and did it. Sometime later, the world will change and accept you the way you are. If you are not ready to take the plunge, you will never take the plunge. So don't worry to walk alone in a crowd. Don't worry that your peers have to accept you the way you are. Uh, it's fine. If life is telling you something, if you ever find yourself in a minority, you are at the right place. Don't complain about it. If life is telling you something, you are in the right place. It is okay to walk in a direction that nobody else has walked in. And that's the way life is. Initially, the world will laugh at you. Over a period of time, the very reason that the world laughs at you, the world will accept you later for. And then eventually, the very reason the world laughed at you, the world will admire you for one day. This is the stages of life that everybody has to go through. But many a times, when we think differently and act differently, and the world laughs at us, we think we must, you know, be a part of the world, do whatever everybody else is saying. But little Monk, little Richard teaches us we don't have to be a part of the world. And this is the stage at which we all are. When we take up the path of spirituality, it simply means you are a little ahead of time. A lot of us, when we take up the path of spirituality, people don't understand us. People laugh at us. And sometimes you also feel ashamed. Maybe I am not fitting into the world, and that's why everybody is laughing at me. Maybe I should try to fit in. And we artificially try to fit in, and that's not something that is advisable. As Richard grew up, he realized that he is very different from the rest of the world, and he joined in what is known as the counterculture. In America in the 1960s, 1950s, late 1950s and 1960s, there was a wave, what is called as the hippie movement. And that was a wave at which Srila Prabhupada went to the Western world and began to preach. That was the wave in which Richard was growing up in. And everybody who was younger than 30 rebelled against everyone who was older than 30, because they felt people couldn't understand and relate to us. And little Richard here, he began to take up a journey which was very different. He grew long hair, and he began to attend meetings and gatherings where people who were very different from the way mainstream society functioned would gather together. In 1969, he attended Miami Dade College in Florida, along with his close friends, three of them, Steve, um, Basin, and Gary. And the three of them began to become part of the counterculture. And every single day, they began to, explore something that was very different. One day, as um, as Richard was walking on the streets, he realized that the world does not look at his choices in the same way. As he grew up, he began to attend meetings. He attended a particular meeting where um, there was an American person who was a disciple of Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, and that was the first experience of spirituality that he had of the Eastern world. And it immediately appealed to him, and he began to relate to it, and he was very inspired by it. And over a period of time, as he began to grow long hair, the growing of long hair was a protest against anything that was establishment, the norms of establishment. By growing long hair, he was trying to protest against the norms of establishment. That's what the entire younger generation was doing. And he felt a sort of sad fulfillment when people hated him for the long hair, or for the minority religion that he was a part of, or for what he believed in. And he realized that going against popular opinion will, always bring you a lot of hatred. And that's when he had to reconcile two very interesting facts. Martin Luther King, whose teachings he was very inspired by, had made one statement that left a deep impact in his heart. Martin Luther King said, um, that um, to hate those who hated me was to share the same disease. So, though he saw there were people that were hating him, he realized spirituality is about not hating them. And he decided to become compassionate towards those who hate him. And even when he came across people who hated him, he decided not to hate them back, but rather to love them. This is one of the most powerful and impactful lessons that one can learn on the path of spirituality, which is compassion. Compassion means feeling the pain of other people. When someone speaks bad to you, ill to you, when someone hates you, the natural tendency, someone hits you, someone abuses you, the natural tendency is that I feel a pain and I want to give that pain to others. And the opposite of that is what compassion is. Compassion is when you start being so sensitive that you can feel the pain of other people, when you can see and feel the pain of others. One time, there was a man who was dressed like a saint. He came to a king's palace, and obviously the guards didn't want him to go in. They stopped him and they asked him, "Who are you?" They saw his appearance and they thought he was a beggar. He said, "I'm not a beggar. I am a person who has come to help the king. They asked him, "What can you help?" This person, the saint, he knew that the king was suffering from a disease. He said, the guards told him, "Go away from here. The king doesn't need a beggar. He needs a mendicant. He needs a medication, not a mendicant." They said the king needs a doctor. Go away from here. So this king of Indore, he was very sick, and he had been affected by a very mysterious type of disease. And he was lying on the bed, barely able to breathe. Renowned doctors had come and gone, renowned astrologers had come and gone, mystics had come and gone, but no one could help him relieve of the sickness. And this insignificant beggar seems to be saying that he has a solution. This man said, "I've come to bless. The king only needs blessings." Somehow the king's mother got to know about this beggar, and she felt that maybe this is what my son needs. And he brought the beggar in, and she told the beggar, "Please help us come out of this situation." And this fakir, or this mendicant, he was taken to the royal bedroom, and he looked at the king for a long time, and he smiled. And then this man, after looking at the king for a long time, he said, "I will not be able to give you any medication at this moment." And the mother became very, very despondent. She said, "What can I do? Please give me some direction." The mendicant said, "I'll simply tell you what you need to do, and the king will automatically become fine." So he said, um, "Go to my guru and ask him for direction. My guru is a visionary and he'll be able to help." So they sent someone to the guru, and the guru closed his eyes, and immediately he spoke some words back to his disciple. When the disciple heard the message that the guru had given him, he immediately understood what the solution is. He told the mother, "Above the king's bedroom is a loft, and inside that loft is trapped a pigeon. The king had trapped a pigeon on a high ceiling. The pigeon was suffering and died. He said, if the pigeon dies, the king will die. Somehow find that pigeon, set him free, and the king will survive." And then they rushed to the bedroom of the king, and they found this particular loft where there was a ceiling that was sealed by the king, and they broke it open, and there was a pigeon there trapped, dying, very desperate, out of breath, hardly alive. They brought the pigeon out, they began to nurse the pigeon back to health, and slowly, slowly, as the pigeon's health improved, the king's health improved, and the king completely recovered. The mendicant went and told the mother, the solution to pain is not causing more pain, but the solution is to pain is compassion. He said, when you cause a weak person to cry tears, the pain of that weak person causes you so much of pain. And a sadhu, a saint, is someone who feels the pain of the other person. Rather than giving pain to the other person, he feels the pain of the other person. The saint is not a person who sees love and hate as opposites. He understands that in a heart where there is love, there cannot be hate. Even if the person hates him, he is not going to hate that person. And therefore, little Richard, when he meditated on this beautiful statement that to hate those who hate me uh, is to share the same disease. And that is what Richard learned over his life. And as he grew up from this phase of extreme chaos in society, as little Richard grew up, he began to become a part of the civil rights movement. At one point during his life, when he was 19 years of age, he came across an elderly woman who was very close to Martin Luther King. And this African American, elderly woman who was in her 40s, um, she was a very strong-willed woman, and Richard began to have conversations with her, which were deeply rooted on spirituality and on understanding Martin Luther King's psychology and teachings. And she began to call him son, and he began to call her his mother. On one particular occasion, she was leading a civil rights movement herself. She was leading a march, and she called him and she said, "Can you be a part of this march?" And Richard immediately agreed, simply because she called him. And this was a massive march on the streets where hundreds and thousands of African Americans, blacks were walking on the streets. And Richard was the only white man in that entire gathering. And she was holding his hand and walking with him right in the front of the march. All the whites that were watching this, they were jeering and throwing bottles at Richard. They were shouting all kind of abuses at him. And Richard had absolutely no malice in his heart, and he simply wanted to support a cause that was genuinely, talking about equality, talking about unbiased approach towards life, which is what the teachings of all scriptures is. Richard had never experienced anything like this. So much of hatred in all directions as hundreds and thousands of them were walking by. And they finally reached a particular garden where the entire crowd had gathered together. And this lady made a speech. And people were very inspired by her speech and they were very, very impressed by her speech. And after her speech, another man made a speech. And when this other person spoke, he was speaking so much of hatred. The civil rights movement by Dr. Martin Luther King was a non-violent and a violent-free protest. But this man began to speak about violence, and he said, Martin Luther King was assassinated at that point in time. He said, "We can't hold anymore. We need to teach them fire by fire." And he was, exciting all the people over there, and not just exciting them. He was really inspiring them towards violence. And suddenly, the entire crowd started looking at Richard. He was the only white man there, and the entire crowd's attention was drawn towards him. And this man began to point out to Richard as if he was representing the entire white community that was so much against them. And everyone was about to lunge on this 19-year-old boy. And this lady realized she made a big mistake by calling this boy to this gathering. And she somehow pushed him from the backside, and through trees Richard escaped and saved his life. That is when he was really shaken up by the whole experience. He was simply trying to love. He was simply trying to be kind. And yet, what he experienced was something far away from kindness. And that's when Richard understood something very, very important in his life. He understood that, I really want to have something meaningful to live for. Martin Luther King had a very famous statement which he would say, if a person does not have an ideal he's ready to die for, he has really nothing meaningful to live for. And Richard realized the ideal that he would like to follow in life was choosing love over judgmental mentality. All those people that were gathered there, they didn't know him, but yet they judged him. And those who knew him, they loved him. And Richard realized everyone standing there is in the same box. I can either judge a person or I can love a person. Even if, and that's the way the world works today, isn't it? The inherent nature of a human being is never free from judgment or from being judged. This need to pass a judgment, this need to, immediately comment is the single most reason why your peace is robbed from your head. And unfortunately, this need to pass judgment is so powerful that in all of us that it actually shakes our own confidence in ourselves. When we judge others, we're actually um, losing our own self-image. When we pass a judgment, when we gossip about others, when we pass comments on others, we're actually shaking ourselves up inside. We're becoming more and more hollow inside. And unfortunately, in today's world, which is a world of wanting to be famous, wanting to be popular, people pass such judgments, and in fact, negative trolling and negative comments gets you more visibility and more popularity than anything else. And therefore, how can somebody who has no idea about playing the game of tennis comment on someone who is playing tennis on the court? How can somebody, when Virat Kohli is hitting a ball, how can someone sitting on the stands with no experience of playing cricket in such a high pressure situation pass comments on how he should have hit? And unfortunately, the kind of life that we all live is that we are trading away our own peace by passing judgments on others. And unfortunately, most of us, if we really live a life of passing judgment on others, it will never be a peaceful life. My judgment does not define the world. Then you'll realize that the worst judgment that others have of me also doesn't define me. When my judgment doesn't define the world, how can other people's judgments define me? A lot of us, we are so bothered about what other people think of us because we are very, very bothered about how people judge us. The reality is that no matter how people judge you, they will never understand you. And when you understand that people are not going to understand me, we have to immediately be also aware that I also must not judge others. The struggle that they are going through is their own struggle. We will never understand the struggle. And similarly, the struggle we are going through is our own struggle. Nobody else will understand that struggle. Spirituality is rising above judgmental mentality and loving people for who they are. It doesn't matter what religion they follow. It doesn't matter what nationality they are from. It doesn't matter what creed, what caste, what color, what language they speak. All that matters is whether we can look at others with the eyes of love, or do we look at others with a judgmental mindset. As Richard grew up, at this age of 19, he reached a point where he had to make a very crucial decision of his life. One particular day, um, Gary, his best friend, and Frank, the three of them were very close to each other. They studied together through college and through school, and they were in the juncture of their life where they were about to enter college. And at that point, Gary and Frank come up to Richard, Little Bonk, as they used to call him, and they came up with a fantastic plan. They were both excited, and they spread the map of the world in front of Little Monk, and they told him, "We are going on a trip to Europe. Would you like to join us?" He was shaken up. He didn't expect that. He said, you know, I was planning to enter college, and I was supposed to spend the whole of summer during the vacations working to gather some money for my college, and that was my plan. They said, "No, no, don't worry, we'll come back before college. Just come with us." And Frank said, "I have all the money for the three of us. You just come. You don't need any money. Just get permission from your parents, and we'll go." And the three of them sat together looking at the world map with so much of excitement. And Richard went back home and spoke to his parents. He didn't know how to bring it up. As they were all sitting on the dining table and he was standing there trying to bring up this conversation, he said, without mincing words, he said, "I've decided to go on a trip to Europe with Gary." And that was a shocker. In the entire family history, no one had set out of America. Generations together, none of them had gone out of America. And here, suddenly, Richard, at the age of 19, is dropping a bomb saying, "I'm going to Europe with my friend." The parents were shocked. And he began to justify. He said, "Don't you think I learned a lot of nice lessons for life in this journey?" And the mother and father, they said, the mother was concerned. She said, "Where will you sleep? How will you eat? Why do you have to do all this?" The father said, "My son, you are crazy. The world is a dangerous place." And he said, I forbid you if I knew that you would listen to me, but I know that you won't. All I can say He said, I'll worry for you day and night. And that's all the father said, and that's all the mother said. Richard, the next day, decided to pack up his bags and leave for a trip to Europe with two of his friends, Gary and Frank. Gary and Frank, they took a flight to Europe from Chicago, and when they the first night they reached Luxembourg, they slept in a campground. They were trying to save money as much as they can so that they can cover as much of Europe as possible. It was a cramped up place, and they were all cramped up into a single tent. And the three of them were sleeping in a sleeping bag. And as they were sleeping, suddenly in the middle of the night, a loud scream woke up all of them. And when they woke up, Richard and Gary, they saw that Frank was frantically crying and rummaging through his luggage. They asked him what happened. He said, "We have been robbed. I have lost all my money and I have nothing left with me now." They were shocked. Their entire plan of traveling in Europe was gone for a toss the first night they landed over there in Luxembourg. And suddenly, um, Frank decided the next morning that I'm going home. I don't want to stay anymore. I don't want to continue on this trip anymore. I don't have any money. I only have my ticket back, and I'm going home. And he decided to return back. At that point, Gary and Richard had to take a call. Do they go back home to the comforts of their homes, or do they continue journeying into something that is uncertain, to something that is not going to be comfortable, and something that is going to be dangerous because they had no money? When Gary and Richard sat together, they thought for some time. They both decided to go ahead. Frank went back home the next day, and Gary and Richard, they decided, even if we don't have any money, it's fine. Whatever little we have, we'll manage with it, and we'll continue on our journey. Suddenly, after taking this decision, Richard felt free. He suddenly felt as if, a big burden had taken off his chest, and he was free in all ways. From that day onwards, the next few days that followed were the greatest adventure in Gary and Richard's life. Every day, they learned to survive practically on no money at all, practically spending nothing. A few cents they would spend and survive the entire day, traveling by hitchhiking and eating bare minimum, and somehow or the other, managing with whatever resources they had. One day, as they were trying to travel from one place to another, they were passing through a small garden, and one man bumped into them and dropped a chunk of fruits. It was a little what we call as fruit salad, dropped into the hands of Richard, and he asked him, "What is this?" He said, "It's sanctified food. Eat it." And he walked away. This encounter is going to be a historical encounter, which we will see much later how and what this is. But at this point in the life of Richard and Gary, they decided to do something that almost no one does, which is getting out of their comfort zone. What makes you comfortable can ruin you. And only in a state of discomfort can you continually grow. A lot of us, we want to live in environments that promote comfort, and we avoid environments that promote discomfort. But the environments that promote comfort are the environments in which you will grow the least, and the environments that promote discomfort are the environments in which you grow the most. When we're talking about Richard's life, the life of Richard is actually parallel to our own lives. What we see in his life is all that we will also see in our own lives. But of course, the story and the context is a little different. But overall, the essence remains the same. If you put a goldfish in a bowl, in a fish bowl, the goldfish only grows to a particular level. But that same goldfish, you put it in a pond, it grows much bigger in size. The ability of the fish to grow is very much there, but it's the environment that decides how small or how big it grows. And therefore, all of us, we have to decide what environment we want to be in. An environment of comfort or an environment of stagnation is an environment where You don't have to stress yourself out. You don't have to take too many steps. It's an environment where you feel comfortable. But there is an environment of chaos in the world, which is an environment of complete uncomfort. We don't want to step into that because there's a lot of uncertainty there. So we want order in our life because when we have order in our life, it's much easier to live life. There's less complexity. But the fact is that whenever there is complexity in your life, you will also grow. And that is the way in which life works. Now you can look at your own lives. Every time you come to a situation of complexity, like say for example, somebody loses a job and that person feels now everything is gone. And suddenly that person is pushed to grow to the next level, forced to grow to the next level. A child who fails in an exam suddenly gets shaken up and he's forced to grow to the next level. Every time we are pushed into an environment of discomfort, we grow. And every time we try to remain in an environment of order and comfort, we get into a point of stagnation and we don't grow. There are uh, three triggers that help us push ourselves from an environment of order or an environment of stagnation towards an environment of discomfort. The first is when the trigger is forced upon you. I'm sure all of you have experienced situations in your life where you are forced into a particular situation. And when that situation arises, you have to decide whether I want to be uncomfortable or do I want to be comfortable. A lot of people, when they are forced into that situation, they decide to challenge themselves and they grow to the next level. Sometimes you're not forced, but sometimes you might find a coach, you might find a guru, you might find a mentor who pushes you out of your comfort zone. And when you come across a mentor or a guru who pushes you out of the comfort zone, then you jump out and you become uncomfortable and you grow. But there is a third, more powerful way to get out of the comfort zone and reach to a point of discomfort where you can face more complexity in life and thereby grow. And that is called trigger it yourself. You can trigger complexity in your own life. You can trigger discomfort in your own life. At this point in time, in the journey of Richard and Gary, they have decided to trigger discomfort in their own life. On the other hand, Frank has decided to go back home and get back into the zone of comfort, get back into the zone of safety, get back into the zone of stagnation. How much Frank grew, we don't know. But how much Richard and Gary grew, we know. Because what they're going to do now is they have decided to push themselves into a situation of discomfort. I'm not saying that all of you have to go, on a trip, to Europe with no money or travel around hitchhiking. That's not what I'm saying. In whatever situation we are in, we can make ourselves a little more discomfortable. We can make ourselves a little more, we can make that situation a little more complex by pushing ourselves into zones that we would otherwise not step. uh, Getting out of the comfort zone initially is not easy, but if you push yourself a little bit, force yourself a little bit, and take up complexity, it will aid you a lot in your journey. Richard, Frank, Richard and Gary, they set aside on this massive journey across Europe. They began to hitchhike across United Kingdom. They traveled practically from one country to another, and every time they traveled, they go through a lot in their lives. I'm going to share with you all some experiences that they had, which were sweet and bitter both simultaneously. Because they had no money at all, they were practically traveling hitchhiking. At one particular time, when they were traveling through UK, at one point they were caught by the police, and the police officers, they suspected these were hippies carrying drugs, and they began to they told them, remove whatever you have, show everything you have. They opened up their little bags and showed them. There was hardly any belongings there. The police were taken aback. That's all you have? They said, yes, this is all we have. They said, remove the drugs, whatever drugs you're hiding. They had no drugs at all. And the police were harassing them. They said, if you behave like this, we're going to chop off your hair. And they were trying to push them and corner them. And Richard and Gary were completely confused on how to react because they were scared. They were in a foreign land and with hardly any money, and the police were just acting so unfair to them. At some point, they decided not to speak anything and keep quiet. After a particular, a long interrogation, finally, one of the police officers pulled them out from the jail and threw him on the street and told them, "You're free to go, but our eyes will be on you." Richard and Gary walked out free but scared because they realized they are always being watched and they are in trouble. So, over a period of time, they began to travel around and they reached a particular place where they heard the famous Jimi Hendrix was performing. Jimi Hendrix was a musical legend at that point in time. Gary and Richard, they made a few friends and they got entry into the show of Jimi Hendrix. Jimi Hendrix show was massively packed. Jimi Hendrix was the rock star hero of that era, and every youngster idolized him because he had everything that everybody could aspire for: more cars, more money, more women, more wealth, everything more, and fame, such levels of fame. As they were, when they attended Jimi Hendrix show, they were very impressed with this person, and over a period of time, they began to speak about him a lot. A few days later, while they were staying in a little small room along with a group of other youngsters, they got the news that Jimi Hendrix is dead. And that news shook up Richard a lot because he realized that I thought this person is everything that everybody could aspire for, and he is dead because of a drug overdose. And he realized there is more to life than this. And Richard began to ask himself, do I really want to be a part of this kind of a movement? And he said, I certainly don't fit into this generation. He didn't fit into his parents' generation. He didn't fit into this generation. And he was thinking, where do I fit in? And that point of time, he began to offer a prayer to God. He began to offer a prayer to God that, please show me a way. And he also offered a prayer for this Jimi Hendrix who had died. Um, Richard was in a situation in life where he was trying to fit in with what other youngsters were doing. So while they were traveling around, the youngsters were talking about girls, youngsters were talking about music, youngsters were talking about the pop culture and whatever else was going on. And Richard was trying to somehow or the other join in those conversations, but somewhere within his heart he felt, I don't feel I belong here. I don't enjoy these conversations. And one day he thought of a verse from the Bible that really hit him hard. And he remembered this sentence: "Come out from among men and be separate." And he started thinking, why should I waste my life trying to fit in with social functions and trying to fit in with what others are trying to do? And he decided that I am going to do something different. And from that day onwards, he decided to think differently. One day they were deciding, where do we go next? And Richard, this little monk, he had a very fascinating idea. He said, let's go wherever God wants us to go. He took a flower and he said, we should be like this little flower. Which side, which direction the flower waves doesn't depend on the flower. It depends on the wind that blows it. Let us all be like this flower and just surrender ourselves to the will of God. Gary just couldn't understand anything he was saying. He seems to be talking too philosophical. And Gary said, you do whatever you want to do, and I will just follow you. And that became a historic day in the life of Richard, Jimi Hendrix, and then his own realization about what he really wants to do in life. There was a man who bought a buffalo in a fair, and he was going back to his village. At the exact same time, another man from the village was coming to sell buffalo in that fair. And both these men came in front of each other. The two men began to talk to each other. They had a buffalo, a rope tied to their own buffaloes. The two men stood in front of each other, and the two buffaloes stood in front of each other. And they were talking. The two men began to talk and talking about what they're going to sell, how much they're going to buy it for, and all that. And the two buffaloes were looking at each other and talking. And one buffalo began to speak to the other buffalo. He said, He thinks he's holding the rope so that I cannot run. But the buffalo laughed and he said, but the fact is that he also cannot run. Just like I am bound to him by that rope, but he is also bound to me by that same rope. You are possessed by what you possess. In restricting the freedom of the buffalo, the man's freedom also was gone. So the very thing that you possess possesses you also. You are enslaved by the very thing that you slave. Life at some juncture makes us question a lot. I'm sure all of us who are embarking on the path of spirituality found the world to be a little strange place. People are going crazy buying an iPhone. People are going crazy going to shows and events, and people are going crazy about cricket, and people are going crazy about actors and movie stars. And you start thinking, why am I not acting crazy? Why am I not feeling like that? Why am I not feeling the same excitement that others feel? And that's when you realize life is different from my point of view, and I need to think differently. So Richard, at this point of time, he decides that I want to think differently from what others are thinking, and I want to go deeper than the superficial external things that the world is excited about. And that's when he found his calling to God to be much, much stronger than it was ever in the past. While Richard was traveling, at one particular point, he was given the harmonica by one of his friends. And that harmonica became a part of his life from then on. When this friend of his gave him the harmonica, Richard immediately said, I don't know music. And this man said, you don't need to know music. You just need to feel your emotions, and music will come out. Music is not something that is technical, that needs to be known. You have to just feel it. When Gary and Richard were traveling in an airplane, from Chicago to Europe, while they were traveling on this airplane, they in that flight, while they were on this flight, next to Richard was sitting a man. Actually, there was another woman who was sitting. She was disgusted by Richard's long hair, and she exchanged her seat. And in place of this lady, was sitting next to Richard a man named Johnny Winter. Johnny Winter was a legendary rock and roll star, and Richard couldn't believe that he was sitting next to Johnny Winter for the whole flight from US to Europe. And he was so happy. And Johnny told him, this woman was not happy with you, and somebody else was not happy with me. So both of us are sitting together. We both are brothers, happy with each other. And they both spent the entire duration of the flight playing the harmonica and singing. Jimmy Winter, a famous rock and roll man, he was giving a free concert for everybody in that plane, absolutely free, along with this little monk. And that is how Richard's first experience with the harmonica was. And as they began to travel around Europe, Richard connected with the harmonica even more. He began to sit in seclusion and pour his heart out into the harmonica. And through the harmonica, he was offering sincere prayers to God. He found the harmonica a powerful way of him conveying emotions that he had in his heart that he couldn't express in words. And music became the way he connected with the divine. The world is filled with stories of personalities who have exactly done this, connected with the divine through powerful soul awakening music. Whether we take the stories of Tukaram Maharaj or Namdev or Kanakadas, or in the West, George Harrison, so many more personalities. Each of them have connected with the divine through music. When Tukaram Maharaj would sing his abhangas, the entire mountain on which he would be sitting would be reverberating with the holy names of the Lord. When his wife would come to search for him, there were 4 mountains in Dehu, and Tukaram would randomly sit on any mountain, go to the peak of the mountain and sit and sing Avangas. And his wife would be getting lunch for him, and she wouldn't know where he is because he's he was Tukaram Maharaj was lost. He was not aware of where he was literally. So this lady, she found a very unique way of finding out where her husband was. What she would do, she would go to the base of the mountain and pick up any random stone from the base of the mountain, put it on her ears. And if in that stone she would hear the reverberations of the music of Tukaram Maharaj, imagine how aware she was, though she was not at all spiritual, but she was very aware because she was connected to the husband so much. When she would hear the reverberations of the music of Tukaram Maharaj in that stone, she would knew my husband is on this mountain. And he would go on top of the mountain and serve him food. Imagine what is the power of vibrations and what is the power of divine calling. Tukaram Maharaj, he turned his agony every time he went through a very tough phase in his life. He would offer a prayer, he would compose a new abhanga. And whatever he was going through in his life, he would share with God through the help of songs. And that's exactly what praying is, and that's exactly how music is. It is not something that has to be technically perfect, it has to be heartfelt, and it has to be perfect from the point of view of offering your heart to God. And that's when awakening happens. One particular day, as they were wandering from one place to another, they reached a particular church. And this particular church, which they reached, was a historic church in Rome and became a historical place for Richard, because there Richard had experienced something that was so profound and powerful that changed a lot of how he looked at his inner calling. He went in this church and he met a rabbi. And this rabbi, he asked, he met an elderly monk, and Richard asked him, "Please, Your Holiness, if you think I am the right person, can you share with me your story?" And this man began to share his story with Richard. He began to share about how he was extremely rich, born in a fascinatingly rich family. And though he was fascinatingly rich, he had so much. There was no sin he had not done. There was no enjoyment that he had not experienced. But one tragedy in his life changed everything. His family met with an accident. And in that one accident, he lost everything. He became an orphan overnight. And suddenly he realized whatever I have and whatever I'm experiencing is futile. And that tragedy made him seek shelter of the Franciscan monks. He was attracted with the philosophy of Francis Xavier, and he joined the Franciscan monks in an order. And Richard was very, very grateful that he shared this story. And he asked him, "Can I ask you a question that is troubling my mind?" And this man said, "Yes, please ask." And Richard asked him, "If God exists and God loves everyone, why is there so much hatred in this world in the name of religion?" And this man, he had tears in his eyes. And he explained to Richard, God is one, and all religions teach the same thing. And he said, and he told Richard, all religions teach us to obey him and love him. But due to shallow faith, due to ego or politics, people fight over superficial differences. And he said, in 50 years of meditation that I have done, 50 years of prayers and charity that I have learned, I have discovered that God's life manifests to different people in different ways. And he said, if you are, ready to connect with the divine within your heart, you will experience God. You will experience God in your unique way, and God will guide you personally. Saying that, this man touched Richard. Richard, little monk, was so touched by this experience. He sat and he decided to contemplate on this teaching. He went to a church, a very unique church, where there was a there was a display of human skeletons, and there were old monks sitting there and praying. And there was a big board over there, to explain what they were doing. And that board in front of all those skeletons, it said, here we contemplate the impermanence of the body and its attachments. And it is said that, you know as you are now, we used to be. As we are now, you will be. Imagine. a statement like that in front of so many skeletons, and the monks were sitting in front of that and meditating, and that was something that had a profound effect on Richard. Just as a seed already carries within it the blueprint of a tree it is meant to become, each one of us carry inside us an inner calling. The seed doesn't need to be told what it should become or what it will become. It only needs the right environment. It only needs nourishment, and then it will discover what it is supposed to be. Similarly, when we follow our calling, it is about nurturing what is already inside you. Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema Sadhaka Banay Shravanadi Shuddhi Chitta Karahuday. We already have love of God inside our hearts. It's just that you create the right environment, the love of God flourishes and comes out. A map tells you where to go based on external paths, but a compass only tells you direction. Your inner calling is like a compass. It doesn't show you the full roadmap, it doesn't show you the full road ahead, but it keeps pointing out that this is the direction you will find your truth in. A river may take twists and turns, it may face rocks, it may face dry patches, but it never forgets its ultimate destination, which is the ocean. In the same way, no matter how many challenges are there, our inner calling continuously flows within us and it draws us towards fulfillment towards God. And that is what little monk realized in this particular situation in his life. Richard and Gary, as they continued on this journey, they came across a situation that was very, very, you know, uh, revealing to both of them. One particular day, they were, they had visited a church and they came out. And after they came out of this church, Richard saw something in the hand of Gary. He asked him, what do you have in your hand? Gary had taken a little chandelier from the church. Richard asked him, how can you rob something from the house of God? And Gary immediately told him, a few days back, didn't you rob something from a library? They had gone to a particular bookstore and Richard saw a small book on how to play the mouth organ, the harmonica. And he picked up that book, put it in his pocket, and without, without paying for it, he walked out. And Richard realized, I am telling him, but I am also wrong. But he said, still, you can't rob from the house of God. And Gary started saying, no, the house of God is the place of greatest politics. There is more politics and there is more money and power there than anywhere else. Richard said, all said and done, the fact is that I am not happy with what you have done. I want you to return it back. And Gary and Richard, the next day they decided we are going to follow what our calling says, what our heart says. Gary was initially egoistic, trying to defend, but then he realized Richard is right. And the next day they went back to the church and returned that chandelier there. Then that night when they were sleeping, Richard was thinking in his heart, I gave him a big sermon to return back what he had stolen, but I'm doing the same thing. He decided the next day that he's going to go and return the book back. And Gary, realized what Richard is thinking, and he said, "Please don't return the book. At least read the book before you return it." And because the playing of the harmonica had improved so much simply by reading that book on how to play better. And Richard, by the end of their visit in Rome, he went back and returned the book in exactly the same place where he had found it. And that they decided was something very important for them. What they decided was they want to be authentic in their life. It takes a lot of guts to be authentic. It takes a lot of courage to be authentic. It takes a lot of courage to overcome the fear of being authentic. A lot of us, we hold fears in our hearts, and that fear stops us from being authentic. One act of courage is enough to become for you to become authentic and face all your fears. There was a man who was living in a small thatched house, and began to rain terribly. And his wife told him, repair the roof of the hut, it's leaking inside. In the middle of the night, dark, pitch dark, this man got up on the roof and he began to repair it. He didn't know what was happening, and he felt something prick him, and he didn't know what it was. It was too dark for him to even look. He just ignored it, continued doing his work. He finished it off, came back and slept overnight. The next morning, when he got up, the son screamed and called the mother and father out. And the son pointed out on the roof, the thatched hut, the roof was tied up with ropes. And this father, instead of using a rope, one of the ropes he used was a snake instead of an actual rope. And that's when the father realized that that thing that pricked me was not a rope, not some thorn. It was actually a snake that bit me. And the moment the father realized that, he collapsed on the ground and he was almost dying. And obviously, they admitted him in the hospital and he recovered. But the most fascinating thing was that when the snake actually bit him that night, he slept through and he experienced no symptoms at all. But the moment the next day he saw that it was actually a snake, fear developed in him. And the moment fear developed in him, he got affected by the snake bite. And he actually experienced the same symptoms that you would experience after a snake bites you. Fear tends to paralyze us from acting. Fear tends to paralyze us from doing things that we should be doing. Fear prevents us from being our authentic self. But the way to overcome the fear is by stepping and taking up one act of courage. The last part of the story is the most powerful part of the story, which we'll end today with. Um, Gary and Richard lived in Greece for quite some time, and in one of those moments, they lived in an island called Isle of Crete, and both of them decided to spend a few weeks there on the Isle of Crete and meditate and do some soul searching. Richard walked up a mountain and began to meditate, and Gary walked up to a beach and began to meditate. They would spend the whole day alone, and after the whole day was over, they would come back and meet together. Like this, they were spending days on end, in their own quest, in their own little ways. One day, as Richard was meditating on this mountain in the Isle of Crete, um, he heard a voice that was very powerful from within his heart, and a voice told him, "Go to India." Richard was shocked. He couldn't believe that he actually heard a voice like that. And it was a very clear, specific voice. He didn't know whether it was his mind. He didn't know who it was. Was it a voice of God? Was it an inner calling? He didn't know. He came back that evening and he told Gary, "Gary, I have something to share with you." Gary said, "What?" But he said, "I also have something to share with you." And Richard asked him, "What do you have to share?" Gary said, "Something happened to me at sunset. I heard a voice. A voice spoke to me." And Richard asked him, "What did the voice say?" And Gary said, "The voice told me, go to Israel." And, Richard, his mouth dropped and he was shocked. And he said, "I also heard a voice at sunset, but the voice told me, go to India." Gary was even more shocked. He said, "Please, let's first go to Israel, gather some money, and then we both will go to India together." Richard said, "I have to answer my calling." And Gary said, "You have no idea what it means to go to India. It's so far away, so many countries to cross. We don't have any money at all. How will you ever reach there? You have to cross the deserts and so much of trouble." Richard was very adamant. Gary told him, "This is not a path, a journey to India. This is a journey to suicide." But Richard decided that he is going to embark on this journey and answer his calling. And Gary, he was, you know, very, very sad that they are parting, but they decided, if destiny wills, we will meet together. And they decided, they'll pray for each other and they were leaving. And just when they were going to part from each other, going on their own journeys, Richard removed a vest that he was wearing. This was Richard's favorite vest. He had worn it all his life. For years together, he had worn this vest. From the time he started going to college, he's been wearing it for years together. Through this whole journey in Europe, that he has been wearing every single day. He removed the vest and gave it to Gary. And Gary was so touched because he knew how dear this vest was to Richard. And he held it tightly in his heart. And Richard felt, someday, if God wills, we'll meet again. And they parted. And with that giving of that vest, Richard felt, I've given my identity away. All my past and present identities, I've given it away along with that vest. And now all I have is a new identity that I have to find for myself. And that is how Richard and Gary, they went ahead towards the unknown. Many of us resist stepping fully into our calling, not because we don't believe in it, but because we don't see the entire path. We want to know the entire path before we begin to walk. When people come on the journey of spirituality, they're not sure. They say, tell me exactly what will happen sequentially. Nobody can tell. Many people think, what if I'm not ready? What if I fail? What if I'm making a mistake? But the truth is that you don't need to see the whole journey to take the first step. We all hesitate, we hold ourselves back because we want a detailed roadmap before starting, a confirmation before we begin and put the first step. God doesn't work in this way. Spirituality doesn't work in this way. You have to first put one step with faith, and the next step follows after that. Surrendering simply means you don't have all the answers. Saying yes to your calling doesn't mean that you have all the answers. It doesn't even mean that you know the next step. It doesn't even mean that you have no fear, and your fears are you have been dealt with. Saying yes simply means that you trust that you're being led by someone. It simply means that I need to the desire to control every outcome. I need to surrender that and allow the path to reveal itself to us. Why do people, when we are going on this journey of spirituality, what is the way in which we can go ahead on this journey with spirituality with confidence? The first step is release the need for perfect clarity. If you want perfect clarity, a full plan, it is not going to happen. Release that need. God rarely reveals everything at once because faith is built in trust, not in knowing everything. The second thing that you need to, the second step rather that you need to do is listen to signs and small little nudges. Um, if you have to go on a particular path, it will come up in small conversations, in little discussions. Now, throughout the journey of Richard, if you are seeing, there are little small signs that Richard has been seeing, and every little sign is giving him a direction. It is telling him that this is the way you should go. Pay attention to those little signs. You will find your direction. Third, trust that you are ready. Even if you are not ready, even if you don't feel you're ready, just trust the path. Just trust the journey. Trust God. And you just need to take one step forward. And then the fourth thing is that take small steps without fear. You don't need to make a big move immediately. When we start on the path of spirituality, we are told chant one round, just hear one class, just come and eat one prasad. Just one little step. Every little step leads you to your destination. And finally, the most important thing is that when you embark on this journey, understand that if you are challenged, the challenge is not to break you. If you are challenged, the challenge is to make you. You will be guided, but you must be willing to go ahead. You will be transformed, but you must be willing to trust the process. Your yes towards going towards the unknown is simply meaning that I have already started the process. It is simply a matter of walking in that direction because the road ahead is already waiting for you. You have to simply start walking towards it. Richard has taken on this journey towards the unknown. And there are so many powerful lessons that are waiting for us to learn. Today, we have learned 10 powerful lessons through this journey of Richard. And as we're exploring the journey of this American Swami, His Holiness Radhanath Swami Maharaj, who was Richard and who is eventually going to become a very powerful and a very evolved personality, we are all also on our own journeys exploring the path of life and the path of spirituality. Thank you very much for joining in. And if you are happy with what you heard, and if you have learned a lot in what you have heard, please do join in for the remaining six sessions. And um, it's going to be a promising and rewarding journey as we explore the journey home together. For me, it's been a very heart satisfying journey by not just studying and presenting the journey home, but also helping all of you walk through the steps that can help you in your own journey towards your homes, the spiritual homes, the abode of God. Thank you very much, and I'll see you all next Friday, where we join in on another session where we explore journey home in depth from where we left off. All of you will receive handouts for this session, a detailed handout for every single lesson that we have learned. There will be action points that you can implement in your life. There will be journal prompts that you can actually meditate on and write. There will be a mantra from every lesson that you can carry in your life. There will be a small glimpse of the story itself and the beautiful photographs that you saw. All of these handouts will be given to you in the WhatsApp community. If you have already joined there, please do join in. If you're not there, you can join in through the link that has been sent to you all, and we will be happy to serve all of you. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Yes, you got that, Prabhu.
Prabhuji, thank you so much. Thank you so much for the fabulous 10 lessons what you taught us today. I have one question for you. Can I ask?
Yes, please.
Yeah. Now, here we are witnessing that Mr. Richard, he is not yet a official devotee or has not yet taken path of devotion. And still he is getting so much guidance from the heart. So is it true that most of those special souls, you know, it happens with them that even before they manifest their devotion to the world, right from their childhood, they the devotion may be unmanifest, but still they are guided in the heart. So is this kind of a common feature in the great souls?
I personally feel that anybody who is spiritually very evolved will be more aware. All of us also receive guidance on a daily basis. In fact, every living entity in this world, everybody, especially in the human form, will receive guidance from God. But the difference between great souls, evolved souls, and us is that we are not aware of it, and they are aware of it. That awareness is what makes them different from us, and that awareness comes from practice. It's not something that has come from this life. They have been aware for many lifetimes, and now it's become very much a part of their existence and a part of the way they think and behave. But for all of us, we have to practice becoming aware in this life, and maybe in next life or the future lives we might become more aware and intuitive and see the guidance that is available to us. Thank you. Does anybody else have any other questions before we end for today? Thank you very much. Very, very grateful to all of you all for being here on this very important journey with all of us. And hopefully this journey is also going to become a journey of your own lives. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.